I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember bacon makes everything better.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the David Glenn Show, now available exclusively here on the North Carolina Sports Network. Our next guest is a three-time Atlantic Coast Conference Coach of the Year and a three-time ACC champion. And in 2021, he was the National Coach of the Year in women's college basketball, a sport whose popularity has skyrocketed in recent years. Just in the last 5 NCAA tournaments, Coach Wes Moore has taken NC State to the Sweet 16 4 times. And in 2022, he built a team that went all the way to the Elite Eight before finishing with a 32-4 record and a number 3 national ranking in what was the best season in program history. About 30 years ago, Wes served as an assistant coach to legendary Wolfpack coach Kay Yao, and today his teams, of course, play their home games on Kay Yao Court in her honor. As he joins us, his 2024 squad is 23-3 and ranked number 6 nationally. Wes Moore, welcome back to the David Glenn Show and to the new North Carolina Sports Network. How are you, Coach?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on, David.
It's great to have you. Take us back to the beginning before we jump into today's world. When did you realize you wanted to be a coach way back when, and why?
Oh, well, I love sports, love being around it. And I guess, I tore my ACL in my illustrious career at what's now Johnson University in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I knew I wasn't going to be a lottery pick. And so my playing days were winding down. So, coaching was something that I loved. My wife and I got married, and to be honest, I was out of school for a little while, and then decided, I was in sales, and I looked forward to lunch where I could read the sports page, and 5 o'clock where I could play basketball or softball or whatever. And I finally decided, I got to go back and get this done. So went back, finished up my education at Johnson and then at University of Tennessee, and just really blessed. It's been an unbelievable ride and journey.
By the way, congratulations on 43 plus years of marriage. I'm going to need some advice along those lines. But back to your career. At the very beginning, you were an assistant on a men's basketball team. So remind us, what made you jump to the women's game way back in the 1980s? And then you took that Division III head coaching job on the women's side in 1987. And then just remind us, why have you stayed in the women's game all these decades?
Well, to be honest with you, the men's gig was at Johnson. When I graduated from Johnson, went to the University of Tennessee for a couple of years. I helped the men out kind of as like a grad assistant or whatever for 2 years, and then also coached the volleyball team there while I was getting my education degree and my master's. And then, to be honest, when I got out, I had 2 job opportunities in that area. I kind of wanted to stay in that area. My wife was working at Johnson in like student recruitment and admissions and all that. And we had a free apartment. And so we kind of wanted to keep that. And so I wanted to stay in that area. And I had a high school boys job offer, and I would have taught science, biology, or something like 5 or 6 times a day. And the only reason I was certified in science was because as a PE major, I had to take like 12 hours of science. I would have had to study more than the students. And by that time, I was kind of sick of studying. And my other offer was a D3 women's job, a head coach. They went 1-25 the year before. They wanted me to coach basketball, women's basketball, fast pitch softball, be intramural director, and pay me $10,000 a year. And so again, I like the idea of going out recruiting instead of studying science at night. And so I went that route and have been so blessed because of it. Just all along. I mean, every decision I've made, sometimes I thought I'd made a mistake in my career decisions. And then every time the Lord would make it work. And I've been really blessed.
Fast forward, Coach, we could write a book about your career and success, and there might be another book just on the growth of your sport.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit you with a couple of numbers and then ask you to reflect on what made this possible, right? From your salary compared to $10,000.
Yeah.
But the 2023 season was the most watched in women's basketball history, an all-time record of almost 9 million. That's in attendance at the Division I level. And then last year's national title game set another all-time record. About 10 million people on average were watching that LSU-Iowa national championship game. I have to imagine as a younger coach, even though you're an optimist, you could not have possibly foreseen this incredible growth financially, popularity-wise.
Yeah.
But what do you point to that explains this beautiful growth?
Well, I think you got to start with the players. You know, they're the ones that put on the show out there for everyone. And so, again, I think the talent level, the athleticism, the skill sets have just improved so much that it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look back, I was around Pat Summit, my first, 6 years of coaching. I was around her a lot. She was a real role model, mentor to me. And then I was here with legendary Kay Yao. So I've been around two of the best. So you got to also give them a lot of credit for being the trailblazers that got this thing going. And they're the ones, I know, like I did at D3, we had to wash the uniforms and do all those things and drive the bus. And so, but I think you start with the players and then also I think in my case, at least here at NC State, a real commitment by the administration. I think our athletic department, our AD, Boo Corrigan, I think they're really trying to make everything equitable as possible. And so that too has been a big blessing for all of us. I think there's a commitment around the country. And, our timing was pretty good. Our contract with ESPN for women's basketball was running out after last year or whatever, or this year coming up maybe. And so when you break all those numbers viewership wise, that doesn't hurt any as far as pumping money and resources into our sport. So again, you're right. It's been unbelievable to see where it's come from.
Coach, I would not have as much knowledge as you when it comes to the great players in college basketball history on the women's side. But I did see, a Diana Taurasi, a Candace Parker, a Shamik Holdclaw. When I was a young guy, Cheryl Miller was one of the big ones. Brianna Stewart, of course, more recently. When you look at the Caitlyn Clark story at Iowa, who is part of this growth in popularity, just one piece of the puzzle. She may repeat as the player of the year. She just became the all-time leading scorer in women's hoops history at the college level. Do you kind of stay out of the GOAT, greatest of all time debate? Because there are actually some kind of nitpicking Caitlyn Clark's resume, almost unnecessarily in my eyes, but I don't think you can go wrong by picking the players I mentioned or probably another dozen you could mention.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a great list you just rattled off. And, the thing is, I've got personal experience with Caitlyn Clark. Obviously, Brittany Griner. When I was at Chattanooga, we played Baylor, so I saw her up close and personal. But seriously, Caitlyn Clark, she'd cross half court against us, and we were fortunate. We actually won at Iowa a year ago. Okay, but I didn't get any calls during the NCAA tournament about how to shut Caitlyn Clark down because she lit us up for 45 points, and we won. So again, she crosses half court. You better be guarding her. And thing is that maybe it's lost by some people. She also gets others involved. I mean, it isn't like she's just jacking them up all the time. And she does shoot a lot, but she also has a ton of assists. And, when you're playing with somebody like that, I grew up in Dallas. So the Mavericks, Luka, he shoots a lot, but he also gets other people's shots because the defense is concentrating on him so much. So it's amazing, though, she can do that. with defenses geared to slow her down. And like I said, she makes you pick your poison. If you want to commit, a couple of players to her, she's gonna find the open person. And because of that, Iowa's been really good the last couple of years.
We both mentioned the late legendary coach Kay Yao, and it was about 30 years ago that you spent 2 seasons working as her assistant. What do you remember most about those 2 years in Raleigh way back? And did that experience contribute to you saying yes to the Wolfpack back in 2013, where an old friend of mine, Debbie Yao, of course, Kay's sister, then the NC State athletic director, offered you the Wolfpack job? And Coach, you know this. Debbie's a former women's basketball coach. So when she offered you that job, man, that's as big a compliment as you can get.
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. With Coach Yao, I was, like I said, D3 coach. I was supposed to be interviewing at Catawba in the next week or two. I went to AAU Nationals for the first time. When you're D3, there's not really a lot of advantage of going to AAU Nationals. But I decided to go this one year. There was 12 venues. I literally drove in a circle debating which game to go to. I decided, in case I got the Catawba job, I'll go see the North Carolina team at a little gym. Tennessee Temple University is where they were playing. Sat down. A few minutes later, Kay Yao comes in, sits down near me. We talked during the game, the whole game. Never met her before that day. After the game, she says, "Wes, would you be interested in interviewing for assistant position?" Wow. So again, I'd never gone to AAU Nationals. I could have gone to any of 12 venues. She could have sat anywhere in that gym, and boom, all that leads to that. So yes, main thing about Coach Yao, everyone loved her. All her former players, she was, she cared more about people than she did wins, even though she had 700 something wins, took this program to a Final Four, took the Olympic team to a gold medal. But even now in her passing, look at the impact she's making with the Kay Yao Foundation and all they're doing for cancer research and treatment and things like that. So, and then Debbie, hey, love her. I love her. She hired me, and this was, again, a big time opportunity. I never dreamed I would be back at NC State. I really didn't. And to have the opportunity, and never forget, Debbie, with last meal we had on my interview, I asked her what kind of time frame we looking at. She said, "Oh, we're probably knowing within the week or so." And I told her, I said, "Wow, I really blew y'all away, huh, on this interview." But a few days, a day or two later, I get the job. And then when they hire Kevin Keats, they do the press conference, and she came up and spoke and said, "I knew within 15 minutes this was our head coach." Yeah. So that made me feel good. She needed a week to think about me, okay?
I still keep in touch with her, Coach, so I'm going to mention that story to her the next time I chat.
She's heard it.
I'm sure. I used to enjoy – I've known a lot of athletic directors for 30 years of covering this league, but I would try to sit next to Coach Debbie Yao at the ACC tournaments I covered, because unlike most ADs who are knowledgeable sports people in their own way, but Debbie, as a former coach, just looked at stuff through the lens more like I guess you would look at. I'd love to sit next to you as well. I'm going to give you a quote of yours that I read that I loved, and I hope you'll just elaborate on it. For those who don't know, Coach Moore was at Chattanooga. So he had great success D3, great success D2, jumps to D1. He's at Chattanooga. In a 14-year period at Chattanooga, Coach Moore leads his teams to 12 first-place finishes out of 14, 9 Southern Conference tournament titles, and 9 NCAA tournament bids. So I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. You're about 50, mid-50s back in 2013. And your quote was something along the lines of, "I could have just floated down the river at Chattanooga in my inner tube and enjoyed life. Instead, I'm just crazy enough to jump into the kayak in the stream that has currents and rocks and other challenges all over the place," meaning, of course, NC State and the ACC. What was in your heart? I even heard you say it might have been a mistake in your soul if you had stayed where you had this incredible success. Help us understand that way of thinking.
Well, I had some opportunities before to leave Chattanooga, and and I couldn't do it. I mean, I loved it there. I loved the players, loved the city, loved the people. And so again, it's hard when you're that, I spent 15 years there, and you've invested so much. And like I said, it was just really neat. The players that had played for me early at Chattanooga became friends with the players that I coached at the end of my career there. It was such a program, and I'm sure Gino kind of experiences that at UConn a little bit. Tara Vanderveer, Stanford. When you stay at a place that long, the program, the players just kind of become family, no matter when they played during that era. So it was hard to leave. But at the same time, I knew NC State was really committed to women's basketball. Again, I'd been here a couple of years, and I knew that it was a great place to live, great people. So it was just, and to be honest, my wife is from 2 hours from Raleigh.
All right.
Grew up NC State people. So I had turned down an opportunity out here a few years earlier, and I was the black sheep of the family. And then I finally brought her home. And it's such a blessing now. Her parents, she is able to go over there and visit with them every week, take them to doctor's appointments, and help them with different things. And so it's an unbelievable blessing. And obviously we won 3 straight ACC championships. Yeah. I don't know that I ever envisioned that. Heck, I was just hoping we could win one. And so, we've been really blessed with some unbelievable players. I've had great staff. The original staff and the ones today have all helped build this thing. And like I said, just been a real blessing.
Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE. Wolfpack coach Wes Moore is joining us on the David Glenn Show. You mentioned UConn. Of course, legendary coach Gino Auriemma. The Huskies were number 2 in the national rankings when your current Wolfpack team beat them earlier this year. I want to get your perspective on the changing nature of your sport, because I believe Gino at UConn won 10 out of 17 NCAA titles. That's just an incredible dynasty. That was through the 2016 calendar or academic year. Since then, it's been 5 different schools winning these last 6 national championships. Bottom line question is, what has brought about the greater parity in the sport? And as you sit there right now, Coach, do you think there's 10 teams, 20 teams that could win this year's national championship? Is that number a lot different than what you were used to seeing either during that Tennessee dynasty or the UConn dynasty?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, I think part of it is there's a whole lot more talent out there now, and not a lot of difference sometimes between the number 1 player in the country and maybe the number 20 player in the country. And then you got to say, with the portal and all, there's movement, and used to be you could bring a freshman in. It's a tough jump from high school to this level. And used to be you bring a freshman in and you just develop them and watch them grow, and maybe a year or 2, and then it's their time, so to speak. And my GA on my staff right now, her first 2 years here, she hardly played. And then she ended up playing here 5 years. Her last 3 years, she started on 3 ACC championship teams, got drafted WNBA, played professionally some. But nowadays, if you take a year to develop a player, unfortunately, sometimes you're developing them for someone else. And they could have had the same impact here if they would have stayed, because they've grown and matured. But, they're obviously disappointed, so they decide to go somewhere else. So that's the tough part. It does make for more parity, though, because now you don't have the depth on your roster you used to have. And you saw what happened at TCU. You know,
Yeah.
they had some injuries, and now they had to have tryouts to field the team. And you're going to see more and more of that because players aren't going to wait a year or two for their time, so to speak. If they're not getting to play immediately, a lot of times they're going to move on. So I think that's part of it. Like I said, just more talent out there. And then maybe, too, more schools really committed to women's basketball, you know, financially and those sort of things. And it's making it definitely more competitive. And like I said, used to be, you could name the 4 schools that were probably going to be in the Final Four. Now, good luck with that. It's wide open.
In the Wolfpack fan base, Coach, there was a conversation over almost 3 decades, and I wonder if it became part of the conversation even internally among coaches and the athletic department. But basically, it's from until you all won those 3 straight women's basketball ACC titles, there was a 27-year period where there were no ACC titles in football for the Pack, none in men's basketball for the Pack, none in baseball for the Pack. 27 years, despite some other great success. Is that mostly a conversation among fans, or did you and your players back in 2020, especially that first one, were you aware of that 4-sport drought and just kind of kicking the door down and taming that monster?
Yeah, I mean, we were obviously more focused on our own drought because it had been 30 years or so. And so, I mean, it was important to us. You know, unfortunately, the first one, we won the ACC tournament and then starting to get ready for the NCAAs, and COVID took over. And so that was disappointing. Although we did win our last game of the year, which that was kind of nice as a coach, you know, that was good. But, yeah, you know, we've got some awesome coaches here right now. And first of all, we're having a lot of success in other sports. Our cross-country team is, you know, national champions again, wrestling, swimming, women's tennis. I mean, there's so many of them that they're winning the ACC, winning ACC championships. And I look at, you know, football, men's basketball, baseball. I think they're all knocking on the door. You know, I really do. I mean, again, you got to remember, baseball went to 2 College World Series here in the last several years. You know, Coach Keats, I think, has had to try to rebuild, retool it, but I think he's definitely got it going in the right direction. And Coach Doran's coming off an unbelievable year where he lost his starting quarterback and then was able to put it back together somehow and a remarkable finish. So we got great coaches here right now. And I think it's just a matter of time until everybody breaks through that door.
A handful more questions for you. You can be as brief as you need to as we keep your day moving. I'll just give you 4 words and ask you to elaborate a little bit. When you were asked the foundation of your success, you mentioned recruit character and build culture. You could probably write a book on those 2 things, but how do you bottom line the importance of those 2 things?
Yeah, you know, last year we didn't have we had a mix of returners and portal kids and all, and we didn't have quite the same chemistry we had for whatever reason. I do think that's a critical aspect of. Obviously, you got to be talented, but I think sometimes you got to make choices where you pass on a great talent to keep your culture and to keep the character the way you want it. And you know, I've had people ask, how do you have good chemistry? And my answer is, you put good ingredients in the mix, you know, and if you're putting good mix in there, and you know, I look back on those teams that won 3 ACC championships, unbelievable young ladies. They weren't highly ranked recruiting wise. Lisa Kinane was maybe ranked 50 something. The others, a lot of them weren't even in the top 100, 200 even, but they came in, they worked hard. And that was, again, before the portal. They stuck together. They got better individually with development. They got better as a team. And you look back at them, their families were unbelievable as well. You know, again, I think that's part of it. If you got kids that are coming from the right kind of families, parents, that sort of thing, you're going to have good chemistry and good character.
When I was a young guy, Coach, I covered on the men's side some private and public spats between Dean Smith and Mike Krzyzewski back when I was a real young guy. And I was intrigued by how sometimes they'd speak of each other publicly. A lot of times they'd speak privately. I'm leading up to a question. One of your opponents this week is UNC. There's a, Courtney Bankhart of the Tar Heels had the classless comment toward your fans at one point, and then the small gym comment. I've seen you kind of take the high road, and I'm just curious, do you let stuff go like that entirely? Do you have private conversations, or do you ever feel the need to say something publicly?
No, I mean, every now and then I'll make a joke about it. It really, to me, I mean, it's, again, it's all about winning. It's all about getting it done on the court. And, the great thing is with our small gym, we've sold out every ACC game. And I mean, again, I wish it held a couple more thousand. I'm not going to lie to you, but it is what it is. And we're still going to be ranked very high in attendance across the conference. Last year, I think we were number 2 in the ACC. This year, I think we'll be up there, hopefully in the top 3 or 4. So it's, again, our game's growing and all that's exciting. It's an unbelievable atmosphere to play in, though. Reynolds is a special place, and it's a great home court advantage. A few years ago, we were up at Notre Dame, and Digger Phelps was hanging out in the arena for our shoot-around. I had him come out, introduced him to our team, and he said then, which they weren't in the ACC, obviously, at that time.
Right.
But he said, Reynolds Coliseum is one of the toughest places I ever took a team into. And I think our fans make it a tough place for our opponents and a great, fun, electric atmosphere for our players. So, yeah, I don't, again, in a way, I think it's funny, and hey, at least we're on their minds, right?
Yes,
got their attention.
By the way, I covered games in Reynolds way back when the Wolfpack men's team used Reynolds, and UNC's current men's coach, Hubert Davis, who of course played for Dean Smith back in the day, when he was asked the toughest place to play for him as a player in the way back days, I think he mentioned Maryland back when the Terps were in the ACC, obviously, but also Reynolds Coliseum. So that has applied for decades, and I've been to enough of your games to know that it still applies now. King Neptune Restaurant in Wrightsville Beach is the longest running restaurant in New Hanover County. That's since 1947. And it recently was renovated to an impeccable degree by our good friends Jimmy Galeese and his amazing wife, Keaton. Their outstanding chefs offer fresh local seafood, salad options, and creative, tasty variations of pork, beef, and poultry dishes. King Neptune has always been a great choice for dinner and or drinks, and now it's open for lunch and brunch too. Check out the lunch, brunch, and dinner menus at neptuneswb.com. That's Neptunes with an S, then WB for Wrightsville Beach. Again, the King Neptune restaurant website is neptuneswb.com. Your current team has won 8 of its last 9. You have a very high national ranking. Theoretically, you have a shot at a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. It is intriguing, Coach, because of this portal, which has changed the world. 4 of your top 5, I think, are transfer students. What do you like most about this team? How have they come together so quickly? I know they're not all brand new transfers, so they've had a little time. Yeah. And then what are the keys to determine whether you could add another ACC title or maybe even make a magical run to toward an NCAA championship?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm proud of this group. Obviously, they weren't ranked at all coming into the season, had a couple of big wins with UConn and with Colorado, who was ranked number 2 in the country at the time. And then we've had some big wins in this league. Let me say this, though. I'm not looking too far down the road. We have a tough week ahead of us. We have to go to both the Blues this week on the road at Carolina on Thursday, which will be a big challenge, and then at Duke on Sunday. So right now focus is on Carolina, obviously, and then Duke. But we do have a lot to play for. Finishing top 4 in the ACC gets you a double bye and definitely improves your chances of making a run. And then also finishing in the top 4 of the ACC gives you a pretty good chance of being one of the top 16 seeds in the country, and you get to host the first and second round. So we got a lot to play for. We got those 2 games on the road, and then we got Syracuse coming in here the next week, who is in second place right now in the ACC. So it's an unbelievable league, and great players, great coaches. It's tough. It's brutally tough. Coach Keats and I talk about that all the time. It's just, especially when you go on the road, you better cherish and hold on to every road win you can get in this league, because it's special.
Think about that, folks. It's at Carolina, at Duke, and then a top 25 Syracuse team visiting a top 10 Wolfpack team. That is quite the gauntlet for the Wolfpack. Last thing for you. There was a legendary coach named John Wooden who retired at 64 years old. But there was also a legendary coach named Mike Krzyzewski who waited until he was 75 years old. You're in your mid-60s. And I don't ask this question hoping you're leaving. I'm just curious your philosophy. Coach Smith, way back in the day, said that at a certain time of the year, every year, he would call it the fire in his belly. And the first time he didn't feel the fire in his belly, that's when he decided to retire. But he didn't have like a big plan or a framework for a decision. How do you view what is a pretty big fork in your life as a guy who probably like to spend some of these latter years with your lovely wife in a different capacity?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will zero in some. I'm going to retire sometime between John Wooden and Max Krzyzewski. Okay? Somewhere in between there, I'm going to hang it up. But, I don't know. It is. I understand what Dean Smith's saying. It is year to year. And I think you just take time to evaluate. And, I've been very blessed. This is my 35th year as a head coach. So been doing it quite a while. And, again, definitely winning is a big part of it. I don't, I've always said you're not going to have to push me out or fire me. If we're not winning, then I'll walk away and let somebody else get it done. But, I don't know. I like playing golf, but I'm not that good at it. Like to travel, but how much can you travel? So I don't know. We'll see. And like I said, we got the portal changes everything for sure. You've seen a lot of great coaches retire here in the last couple of years. Whether it's Roy Williams and Coach Krzyzewski, as you mentioned, or now Nick Saban, and it's changed. Used to be in the spring, you got to catch your breath. You could go out and play some golf and things. Now, soon as the season's over, really before your season's over, if you're in the postseason, now we have a whole new recruiting season, the portal, and you got to bring kids in for official visits and scramble around and try to fill out your roster. So we'll see. But again, very thankful for what I've had.
For those who don't know, there are only 20 or so coaches in the history of women's basketball that have 800 or more career victories. Our guest, Coach Wes Moore, is already on that list. I think there's only 10 that have hit 900.
Yeah.
So I know you can't win 70 games in a season, Coach, but from my share, I hope to watch you for many more years. But thanks for this extended visit on the David Glenn Show. Congratulations on your amazing success with the Pack, and best wishes the rest of the way.
Thanks so much, David. It's been fun.
You got it. Take back at you. That's Wolfpack coach Wes Moore. Thanks to you for being with us today on the North Carolina Sports Network.